face it, the perfect movie doesn't exist, and even your favourite film couldn't help but let a few mistakes slip through the cracks. From continuity errors to technical issues and straight-up plot holes, it's simply an unavoidable fact of filmmaking that these gaffes will happen. And while most of the time they can be easily shrugged off, every so often they end up accidentally slighting one of the movie's characters. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie with What Culture here with 10 movie mistakes that made characters look like idiots. Number 10. Ian Malcolm holds binoculars backwards, The Lost World, Jurassic Park. God bless Dr. Ian Malcolm, who despite being a genius mathematician, proves himself incapable of correctly operating a mere pair of binoculars. If you look closely as he observes the incoming InGen fleet, you might notice that Malcolm actually holds the binoculars to his face backwards, which would of course make the choppers appear further away. Even though the film itself implies that Malcolm uses the binoculars properly, the proof is in the visual pudding. For all of his smarts as both a mathematician and a philosopher, the guy fumbled something so basic. Then again, knowing the quirky so-and-so that Jeff Goldblum is, he may well have done it on purpose and it somehow managed to get past director Steven Spielberg. Number 9. The Denominators Don't Know Pi, Never Been Kissed. 1999's Never Been Kissed isn't exactly a film anybody is turning to for rigorous adherence to mathematic principles, but at the same time, this is a pretty hilarious and embarrassing goof. Early in the film, undercover reporter Josie is invited to join the Denominators, an academic club who are briefly shown hosting a bake sale with a tablecloth bearing the number for pi. Except the number is totally wrong after the first 3 digits. The movie lists it to 10 decimal places as 3.1457869986. But in reality, it's actually 3.14159265535. Now, were the context any different, then viewers would probably cut the filmmaker some slack here, but given that the scene is literally about a group of mathletes, it's absolutely ridiculous for them to get the number wrong. Although this being a comedy, it is possible that this was actually a devilishly subtle joke on the part of the crew, albeit one that everyone online has freaked out about regardless. Number 8. Katniss holds her bow wrong, The Hunger Games. Watch just about any scene of Katniss drawing a bow in any of the Hunger Games movies, and an army of angry archers will emerge to tell you how her technique and the very way she holds the damn thing is totally and utterly wrong. Now, even accepting that Katniss herself may have basically had to learn things on the fly, Jennifer Lawrence was actually trained by an Olympic archer, so it's pretty baffling that her bow chops are so sloppy throughout. While it's clear that Katniss holds the bow away from her face for cinematic reasons, because the filmmakers wanted Jennifer Lawrence's face fully visible at all times, her technique elsewhere is simply inconsistent with real archery. So where to begin? Her knuckles are curled around the bowstring, her finger rests on the arrow, and she draws the bowstring past her anchor point, all of which are big no-nos for even a relatively unaccomplished archer. And this isn't in any way to insult the evidently professional training that Lawrence received for the part, but simply that her form may have been tweaked slightly to look more aesthetically pleasing from a cinematic perspective, even if it makes Katniss look like she absolutely has no idea what she's doing. Number 7. The street sweeper sweeps the air, Quantum of Solace. While this individual isn't really much of a character in that they're actually an uncredited extra, this goof is just too damn dumb not to include. In the first act of Quantum of Solace, there's a beat where James Bond is staring into the distance while sat atop a motorcycle at a port. We're supposed to have our eyes fixated on 007's own steely gaze, but it's tough not to be totally ripped out of the scene by the fellow sweeping the space behind the super spy. The extra is sweeping his broom a few inches above the ground, seemingly suggesting that he's incapable of carrying out even the most rudimentary of tasks. Or, if you're going to be charitable, the guy's got a chronic back problem and that's as far as he can physically bend down. Ultimately, this was almost certainly a call made by an assistant director who likely instructed the extra to only pretend to sweep in order to avoid the sweeping sound compromising the audio captured for the scene. Except Bond doesn't actually speak at all during this brief sequence, so what was the harm? Number 6. Alfred cleans up while being knocked out, Batman Forever. There's no doubt that the most loyal person in Bruce Wayne's life is his trusty butler, Alfred. But Batman Forever unintentionally takes Alfred's commitment to his job to absolutely absurd levels. Late in the movie, when the Riddler and Two-Face breach Wayne Manor, they do so by posing as trick-or-treaters before the Riddler knocks Alfred out with a cane. He falls to the floor, just as you'd expect in this situation, but the bizarre moment is that after he falls to the floor with a silver tray full of typical butler paraphernalia, he does the weirdly considerate thing of moving the tray to the side of the room, allowing his attackers to move past unimpeded. If you're being super generous to the movie, but honestly why would you be, you could argue that Alfred was acting on pure muscle memory at that point, but come on, it's a huge reach. Obviously, the actor just did this so that his co-stars could clear the doorway without blowing the take, but why would Alfred ever do his assailants such a courtesy? Make it make sense. Number 5. Sebulba ducks down mid-flight, Star Wars The Phantom Menace. This mistake was admittedly an intentional feat of corner cutting on the part of the filmmakers, but fans certainly aren't wrong for pointing it out. During Star Wars The Phantom Menace's breakneck pod race sequence, there's an apparent VFX screw-up where Anakin is being tailed by his primary rival, Sebulba, near race's end. When Sebulba pursues Anakin in the background, he's bafflingly nowhere to be seen in his pod, only to suddenly reappear in the next shot like nothing happened. Now, the movie's visual effects supervisor has since admitted that Sebulba was deliberately kept out of the shot to save the VFX artists some render work when most audiences wouldn't ever notice his absence. But between how famously finicky Star Wars fans are and that the movie has been available in 4K HDR on Disney Plus for a few years now, it's little surprise that details like this have been picked up. And even if you try to make sense of it and suggest that Sebulba ducked down underneath his dashboard, well, that's a mightily stupid thing to do while piloting a craft at hundreds of miles per hour, don't you think? Number 4. Victoria can easily escape her shackles, Black Knight. Ah, Black Knight. Not a great movie, but a memorably unhinged star vehicle for Martin Lawrence with a couple of amusing moments. None prove quite so funny, perhaps, as this glaringly obvious mistake which makes the movie's female lead seem like an absolute lemon. Shortly after being transported through time to medieval England, slacker protagonist Jamal Walker becomes smitten with a sexy chambermaid Victoria. Near film's end, Victoria is taken hostage at the behest of the king's bodyguard, and when we catch a brief glimpse of her chained up in a cell, it's hilariously obvious that she's not really restrained at all. Victoria has just a single hand chained to the ceiling, yet the shot provides enough headroom at the top for us to see that her svelte hand could very easily slip out of the shackle. Look, okay, you can't really chain an actress to the ceiling without being able to escape, but it's still tough to unsee it once you know it's there. Number 3. The total lack of trigger discipline, Independence Day. One more background character now, albeit one whose infraction proves decidedly more alarming than some guy deciding to air sweep. In Independence Day's third act, there's a scene featuring the RAF in the Iraqi desert, and one of the soldiers just might tout the most incompetent trigger discipline in cinematic history. That is to say, the guy is not only pointing his gun at a fellow officer, he's also got his finger resting on the trigger. You needn't be an army vet to appreciate that no soldier not participating in combat would ever be trained to do this. Easy though as it is to mock the unnamed extra in question, the blame likely lies most with director Roland Emmerich or his assistant director, who should have given the extra more express instructions on what to do, or more accurately, what not to do when holding a gun. Number 2. Black Widow eats expired peanut butter, Avengers Endgame. Following Avengers Endgame's 5-year time jump, we see Black Widow making herself a peanut butter sandwich and taking a bite of it while having a call with Rhodey. On the surface, there's absolutely nothing remarkable about this. But if you go back and squint at the jar of peanut butter, it has a 2018 expiration date. Look, I'll be honest, it's not easy to spot, but rest assured, that use-by date is 2018. You can trust us on that. Now, while Endgame's prologue is indeed set in 2018, this scene again takes place 5 years later, in 2023, implying that Natasha is eating stale-ass 5-year-old peanut butter. Now, though you could argue that this is simply a sign of her ongoing post-blip depression, it's clear that with most of the movie being shot in 2017, that the production simply used a regular jar of peanut butter and didn't think twice about anybody seeing the best before label. But Marvel fans being Marvel fans, of course, they spotted it. Number 1. Chip makes a phone call from the power line, the cable guy. The cable guy's eccentric, if we're being kind, protagonist, Chip Douglas, may be a damn weird dude, but he's at least implied to have a comprehensive knowledge of how cable and telecommunications technologies actually work. That being his job and all, no matter how creepily he does do it. And when Chip calls up his friend Steven's girlfriend, Robin, in order to meddle in his life, we see him supposedly tapping directly into a local telephone line to do so. Except he's actually tapping into the power line above. The phone and cable lines would actually be situated lower down on the telegraph pole, and where Chip's sitting, he wouldn't have much luck trying to call anyone, as he should absolutely be aware. Plus, hanging out between two power lines is just a really bad idea if you value your life at all. And that's everything for this list. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, and while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell. Also head over to Twitter and follow us there, and I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild. I've been Ellie with What Culture. I hope you have a magical day, and I'll see you real soon.